With reporting that the state official medical examination has now been completed in the Nolan Wells case, even though the results haven't been released, I think that tells us something big. I want to get into that and the new developments that we're seeing, like arrests and a potential new video coming out. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Another week, and we have more updates in the Nolan Wells case. The mysterious death of that 18-year-old college football player whose body washed ashore 2 days after he went missing while out on a boating trip on Horn Island, Mississippi during the July 4th weekend. This barrier island 10 miles off the Gulf Coast. Later on, I'm going to be bringing in forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan, because I think the reported announcement that the official state autopsy of Nolan has been completed, while the results are not released yet because the investigation's ongoing. The case is going to be reportedly sent to a grand jury to see if there are criminal charges, whether they should be filed. Nonetheless, I think that this announcement, this reported announcement that the report is done, the autopsy has been completed, I think that that is telling. I think that when you look at the timing of the report being completed, that by all accounts, this means the toxicology report has come in. This may say something. Do they now have a definitive cause and manner of death of Nolan Wells? And I'm going to get into that with Joseph. And by the way, this is all based on reporting from WLBT that says officials familiar with the investigation have said this. So on top of all that, on top of the fact that apparently, I hate to say it, but I'm not surprised, did you know that there is a fake toxicology report that is making its way online? Yeah, according to WAPT 16, Mississippi Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tyndall is telling the public that there is a fake toxicology report going around online. He posted this on social media, quote, "The purported toxicology report from Nolan Wells circulating through social media on various outlets is fraudulent. Nolan's family, friends, and most importantly, Nolan himself deserve better." And I'm not surprised that we're seeing this, because there's been so many theories and misinformation. And as we're going to get into alleged harassment, give you a few more updates here. If you've been following this case, we know that everything is about Nolan's whereabouts and timeline. Did he leave his friends and decide to stay on Horn Island to talk to a young woman and never made it back to the mainland? Now, we know that the sheriff's office has been asking the public for any unredacted photos and videos from that weekend to establish a timeline. Now, we previously discussed this distress call that the boat was taking on water, the boat that Nolan had appeared to have been on at some point. And there was a video that came out where it does not appear that Nolan is on board at a certain period of time, meaning he potentially was on Horn Island. And we talked about the back and forth about this strange audio of the distress call where some believe you can hear people in the background suggesting that Nolan is in trouble or that he's dead. And I've spoken to an audio expert who cast doubt on that. I mean, there was one thing he said he wants to hear the original unredacted audio, but also said that when he put it through a transcript, he didn't hear anything that people claim that they hear in the background. There is also an argument that if Nolan was dead or that he was dying, why would somebody on the boat make a call to dispatch at that moment while all that is going on? Also, not to mention that, Nolan is in trouble. So if there's nothing nefarious going on and he's suffering from something, why wouldn't they have mentioned that to dispatch? I mean, again, this is what some of the things don't make entire sense. On the same token, somebody might say, it doesn't make sense that nobody, as of right now, as far as we can tell, based on the public reporting, we don't know what the investigation is, but the public reporting, nobody saw or heard Nolan in distress or drowning, whatever it may be. But again, we're not part of the investigation. We'll see what comes out of it. I say all that to say, apparently, new video has come out. There is this footage here that was uploaded to Instagram by a user where you see the Mac Daddy boat, and that seemingly matched previously obtained and released footage. Now, notably, the person who apparently took this video says they captured this at 11:17 a.m. TMZ claims the metadata shows this was recorded at 2:23 p.m. Now, remember, the current account has been that those who were with Nolan saw him last at 3 p.m. And the footage, again, seemingly matches the older footage of a black male wearing those blue shorts that seemingly are the same ones that Nolan appears to wear in a photo that is circulated of him that day. So this new clip appears to be clear quality. TMZ claims that the adults in frame are different than the ones in that older clip. So is this currently the last known image of Nolan Wells before his body washed up on that island? Now, I also have to talk about another update, and this is threats, okay? So apparently, now at least 2 people have been arrested and charged with allegedly making threats connected to Nolan Wells' case. The Cincinnati Enquirer reports that Michelle Francine Edwards allegedly placed 30 calls to 2 state government offices regarding bombs. The office is investigating Nolan's death. The Sacramento Bee reports that Joseph Alfredo Vasquez Dumarque was accused of sending explosive-related threats on social media to a judge whose stepson, apparently Warren Hudson, apparently a friend of Nolan, was on the boat with Nolan that day, facing at least 1 federal charge right now. And these alleged messages are quite chilling. Quote, "There will be a package coming to your guy's office in the next few days. It's going to blow you away when you see it. LOL. Probably best to have the boys there to see as well. Blood, so much blood everywhere. Hard to clean, especially from a boat. But yours will be quick, I promise. I got all your info. Not even the FBI can stop this." And this comes on the heels of Nolan's family indicating that they too have been harassed, that they too have been receiving threats. And look, while these are all allegations and we don't know the motive or the circumstances, what this does highlight is not only how much attention has been brought to this case, but how emotionally invested people are in this case, one side or another. With all that in mind, now I want to get into something else. Okay, so now I want to talk about the state autopsy. And remember, this comes after Nolan's family had ordered an independent autopsy. We've talked about this before. Undetermined cause and manner of death. It was limited, right? It was limited in that it was reported what they had of Nolan's body, that Nolan's throat was not present. So it was believed that the state ME had kept those throat and neck components for further testing. But now you're hearing this word that the state autopsy has been completed. What does this mean? What should we take from it? I want to bring in forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan from Jacksonville State University, host of the Body Bags podcast. Joseph, my friend, always good to see you. Thank you for taking the time because I know you're a very busy man. Talk to me first about, we obviously don't have the contents of this, so we're going to be, but I think it tells something. I find the timing interesting. I find the timing that if this is true, if this reporting is true, that they've completed it. What does that tell you?
Well, complete means complete. You can actually literally use that because they're not going to say that, Jesse, unless they have the tox and they have the histo, which is the microscopic report. They have that stuff. So, if you think about an autopsy report, very broad terms here, it's got essentially 4 components. You've got the physical gross examination that we do in the autopsy lab, right? Where we're looking at everything, we're examining organs and all of that. Then you have chemical testing, which is toxicology. It's going to be a broad spectrum report. We call it a standard panel. So you name the drug within reason. Okay, I'm not talking about some kind of exotic kind of thing, but within reason, drugs of abuse, prescription drugs. I mean, we even do aspirin. You'll see salicylates on there. Of course, blood alcohol is a big key here, right? That's something we're thinking about. And in addition to that, third part is going to be the histo report, where you're actually taking the samples like the lungs, okay, the lungs and any other tissue samples that they've taken through, and they put them on microscopic slides. The doctor will issue a report relative to that. Here's the conclusion of this. You're going to have the death certificate too. And it will have, in my opinion, at least, it's going to have the manner of death, 1 of the 5. Everybody's kind of wondering what this is going to be. And then it will have a specific cause of death on it.
Let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. So we understand the reporting signifies that the initial physical autopsy was done on July 7th. The testing, yes, like you said, takes longer. Yeah. And histology, which you talked about, can take several days, weeks. Mm-hmm. It's all part of this report. If it was completed in this time, mm-hmm, my main question is, does that signify to you that they know the cause and manner of death, that it's not going to be undetermined in the same way that the independent autopsy was?
Yeah, they've got all these components, I think, and they've got a wide range of things to choose from. I would be very surprised if it was left undetermined at this point, considering how much time they've had to do scientific evaluation. We're into August now, right? Okay. Even if you're doing consultations, let's say you're doing uh, a neuropath consultation where you're bringing a neuropathologist to take a look at tissues of the nervous system. Even if you're doing some kind of toxicology consult, you've had more than enough time to do this at this point, and they have had enough time to run the panels as well. So, in my opinion, yes, sir, we're going to have something that and of course, the big thing here is, why can't we see it? Well, if we were to believe what we are hearing, right? And I don't want to steal your thunder, but I think it was ABC that was reporting over the weekend that it's been released. If this thing it's been completed, is the next step the grand jury. That's why we're not seeing it.
No, it's 100% what it seems like it's going to be, that it's part of the whole investigative file. Don't really know how far along the sheriff's office is in their investigation, if they're not ready to hand this over to the DA for potential presentation to a grand jury. And even if it is presented, whether or not criminal charges would be recommended, it's a component of this.
It is.
Which makes me wonder, if you're handling a very high profile case where the whole world, the whole country is watching, what is the cause and manner of death? Yeah. Do you have to write the report in a certain way to, assuming for a moment, either way, assuming that there is, let's say it's an accidental drowning, or let's say they believe there's some sort of foul play, how do you write the report in a way where there's so much rumors, so much speculation, so much misinformation, so many theories? Mm-hmm. Does it affect the way the report is written?
God, I hope not. Because you have to stick by your training here. You're not trying to enamor yourself with the court of public opinion. That's the worst thing you can possibly do, not for just this case, but any case that you might do in the future, right? You don't want to deviate from what the standard norm is. Now, back at you, I will say, you better make sure that you're very, very thorough. That's why if it were me and this was my world that I was inhabiting, I would recommend that you get as many eyes on this report that are going to keep the information secure inside the investigative bubble from within the forensic pathology community. So if you've got deputy chief medical examiners that are there, y'all come in here, here's the report, here's what my findings are. What do you think? Doc A, Doc B, Doc C, and you take all of those brains and you put them together and you arrive at the conclusion, because at the end of the day, this is the way it's going to work. You're going to have the actual prosector that will sign the report. That is the person that actually did the autopsy. Then you will have the chief medical examiner that will have to sign off on it. And one of the components here that we have to keep in mind, this is going to come from the state medical examiner's office, but Mississippi is a coroner state. So guess who the gatekeeper is? It's that county coroner. And so they're involved in this conversation, and they'll, the coroner themselves will have to sign off on this. And they're an elected official down there in that area. I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's Jackson County is the name of the county.
It's Jackson County Coroner Bruce Lind.
Yeah, so he's involved in this process. It's not merely the state medical examiner. So the elected coroner they're going to be involved in this, as well they should be, right? And if truth be told, his eyes were the first eyes from a medical legal perspective that were on the case, on this young man's body. So when they brought him in from offshore, the coroner or one of his deputies would have physically been there. Then the body's going to be transported to the state medical examiner's office facility. So, their input is going to be critical here as well, Jesse.
So Bruce Lind originally told CNN that there were no signs of physical injury, right? Preliminarily. Mm-hmm. The independent autopsy didn't find apparently any lacerations or gestures or deep tissue incisions or anything like that, other than they've talked about this red discoloration on the head. What could change? What could change to determine that there was some evidence of foul play? What would you be looking out for? What could change between that and there?
Well, there's stuff that the coroner could not have visualized at that point in time. It just viewing the body externally. We don't know what the pathologist saw when they got Nolan on the table, okay, at the state medical examiner's office. So we're talking about internally, because you can see things internally that do not necessarily present externally. And my friend, there's another component to this that I'm very, very curious about, and that is the level of decomposition. Because the second ME made specific reference to this multiple times in their report, because it actually kind of, I'm not going to say confused, but it made it more complex. That physician, who again, I have to say this, he is highly respected. This guy's a former chief medical examiner for DC.
Dr. Mitchell?
Yeah, Dr. Mitchell, highly regarded, highly respected. He did a multi-layer dissection on this area back here, as he did. And if I remember correctly, it hadn't been dissected the way he dissected it. And there were other dissections that were done as well that I will not go into, just out of good taste, but just suffice it to say, this was a very, very thorough examination. As a matter of fact, it actually fits into the same category from a medical legal perspective as what we do with the remains of anybody that dies in custody, or that is in the custody of a police department or in a prison. Those autopsies are really intense, take hours to do. And so he took that step with this case. So this guy has covered everything to this point. And the biggest piece to this is him saying the level of decomposition. From my mind, from my perspective, Jesse, is I want to understand how much time bled off the clock, not just out on the island, where Nolan's remains were recovered, but also, did anything happen from transporting his remains from Mississippi to the DC area where the second examination was done? I just want to know if the remains were degraded to that point. How long did that happen? And of course, any kind of changes like that are going to impact the outcome in the end.
Would we know, other than the fact if Nolan were beaten or poisoned, would we know if it was, let's say, drowning? How would we know if it's really an accident, whether he was pushed in? Or I assume if you put someone's head down in the water too, if let's say they're in an inebriated state, I'm speculating here, but how definitive, whatever the results are, I mean, like, how much is it really going to tell us what happened to him?
Okay, so I'm glad you brought this up, because when anyone is inebriated, that compromises your ability, first off, to defend yourself, right?
Yeah.
And
assuming he was, I don't know the toxicology.
Assuming, yeah, and that's the big assumption. We don't know what the tox says at this point, okay? Or if there's any other agent in his system. And that's something, that specter is out there. That's something I want to try to understand as a medical legal death investigator. I want to know if there were any other substances, not just blood alcohol levels, okay? I want to understand that. Did anything compromise his ability to make decisions or to defend himself? And back to, and this is a salient point, back to this idea of, if, let's say that water was used with specific nefarious intent to bring about someone's death. I tried to be as lawyerly as possible in making that statement, but that the water is actually utilized as weaponized. Okay, we'll say that. To try to find anything externally on the body, that's kind of an uphill battle, man. That's hard to do. So a lot of that information that would come into the ME, that's going to have to come from the police. What did you find in questioning individuals? What did they say? Find inconsistencies with statements, those sorts of things. And back to your earlier point, you don't know, where the SO is right now with their conclusions. What have they reached in the interviews, which I'm sure have been rather lengthy and intense. And you're going to have a lot of people. If they track down anybody that was on that island, I've seen the video from those boats. Guess what? If they have registration that they can see on those boats, and they're registered in the state of Mississippi or Alabama or wherever they are, they're they're reaching out to those people as well. I can dollars to donuts. I can bet you that's the case.
So a couple things here. This medical examiner's report would include components of the sheriff's investigation in order to determine what happened. We shouldn't be surprised if we see that. Interviews, things like that.
Yeah, and there will be some reference to it probably. I don't know how extensively. So you're going to have the medical examiner's report, and then, believe it or not, you're going to have a coroner's report, and those two things are married together. Okay, and it will be like you'll even see the header at the top that will the county coroner's letterhead and everything, and they will have written a report about what they saw. They'll also talk about interactions that they've had with the police and how deep that goes relative to what the lines of questioning are involving any of the potential peripheral people involved in this. I can't speak to that, and I don't know how much the coroner would include in that. I will tell you, I would be shocked if representatives from the sheriff's office were not in attendance at this autopsy as well. They would have physically sent personnel there. If they didn't, shame on them, because you have to be there to have this conversation. And I'm talking about in the physical space. I'm not talking about getting on a streaming service or something like that to do this. I'm talking about face to face. Doc, what is this? Explain this to me so I can understand it.
Going back to that independent autopsy, when they said that there were components of the throat, maybe neck as well, that were removed or weren't present, we've assumed that means the state ME has done further testing on it. What can we expect regarding the testing on that? What clues that may reveal?
Okay, I'll go ahead and tell you what they probably retained. I don't know this for a fact, but I will just say standardly, we're talking about from the tongue all the way down to where the trachea actually bifurcates into the lungs. So that entire structure system that's in there, that will have been retained. They still have possession. Starting with the tongue, you're going to look for any trauma on the tongue that you cannot appreciate if you just open somebody's mouth at autopsy. And you're going to look for biting of the tongue, any kind of contusions that might be there. One of the things that they would have done at autopsy, you were talking about drowning as potentially a weaponization of drowning. One of the things we look for, if everybody will take the tip of their tongue and put it between your lips and your gum, that's called the frenulum. That little piece of tissue can get torn if somebody's holding your mouth like this, like a suffocation. That will have been examined thoroughly. The connective tissue within the soft palate going down into the throat, we're going to look at the hyoid, right? And he says in his report he couldn't appreciate the hyoid. The hyoid is with them as well, okay? So they're going to look for those bony structures that are up here. Also, all of the cartilaginous bodies that are contained in here. We're talking about the pharynx and the larynx and the trachea and all of those structures that are along there. We're also going to be looking at the vessels, the carotids, jugulars, and here's an important thing right here. We've got what are called the strap muscles, kind of interlaced like this. They would have done a detailed dissection on that. That's going to tell you if there's any underlying hemorrhage right here. So they've retained all this. So it's not just like your windpipe, okay? Because I think that a lot of people think that. If you're retaining things, you're going to retain things. And this is all of these structures that kind of play into the breathing or the mechanism of breathing when we initially inhale or exhale. And then you've got the lungs, and we don't really know what the status is. I don't know if they retained the lungs in Mississippi as well, or if they were dissected and then placed back into the bag. I do know that the physician up in DC actually makes comment regarding, he has submitted, I don't know if you saw this, Jesse, maybe not, I can't recall, but he has submitted his own histology. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. If you check his report out, he actually alludes to the fact that he has submitted tissues for his own histological examination.
You're saying his own toxicology exam?
No. Histology, the tissue.
Histology.
Yeah, because by this time, it would be very, very difficult to do any kind of blood draws, vitreous draws from the eyes, bile, urine, any of that stuff by the
Right.
time he gets the remains.
Oh, that's so interesting. Before I let you go,
Yeah.
the red discoloration on the back of the head that was referenced in the independent autopsy, is this something that's going to be referenced in the ME's report? And if it is not, what does that tell you? Does that mean that it wasn't on Nolan's body during that first exam, but was present in the second exam?
That is a fantastic question. That's why I go back to the decomposition that the doctor makes note of. And he even says that his ability to, and I'm paraphrasing here, please, don't take this out of context,
Sure.
but these focal areas that he kind of shades in like a rectangle, which I found kind of interesting from my perspective. If it was not there when the Mississippi ME saw it, then is this something that developed as a result of the travel from Mississippi to Washington, D.C.? Was this a decompositional artifact in total? Or was there something else there? Remember when the folks at the ME's office with the state of Mississippi, they will have seen this a lot sooner, right? They will have had, the level of decomposition will not have been the same as it is as once they got his remains up to DC, and his body has not been preserved to the best of my knowledge. I did not see any indication in the report. I might be proven wrong that the second, because when you do autopsies on bodies that have been embalmed, that is a specific thing that is made note of in second autopsies, and also in disinterments as well.
Okay, let's see what happens. I can't even ask you.
I'm ready to rock and roll.
I can't even tell you when we're going to get results, because I don't know how far along the investigation is. I don't know how long the grand jury process is going to be, but I know you're going to be all on top of it, right?
I will. Just call me anytime, man. Yeah.
All right, Joseph Scott Morgan, great seeing you. Thank you so much, sir.
You bet, my friend.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. See you next time, everybody.